work with motivational speakers, industry experts, thought leaders, and many, many more. And through these very challenging times, our speakers, the talent that we manage, are being provided to our clients for employee engagement through webinars and various online platforms. Today, we have a very interesting speaker, Seema Anand, a mythologist, a storyteller, an expert on women's narrative. If you have read her book of The Art of Seduction, or if you have been online on YouTube, which has 9.5 million views, I am so excited to bring Seema today. Seema, welcome to the other side.
Hey, hi Raga, how are you?
Very well. Why is it looking so nice and light out there?
It could be because the sunlight is really beautiful in London today. We're lucky today.
It's you sure it's not your glow?
It's of course, sorry, it's my inner glow. It's my inner shine.
I love your hair, Seema. What have you done to it? It looks so beautiful.
You know what? Talking about stories of strength, this is my Samson. Is this the Delilah to my Samson, or is this the Samson to my? I'm not
I don't
sure.
know.
Yeah,
You're looking absolutely wonderful. You're looking
I
happy.
care too.
Thank you. And well, it's growing,
It's going-
hopefully. Okay, so Seema, before we get onto it, I really love the subject that we came up with, talking about stories and talking about strength. And I know you're a beautiful storyteller. I just thought, why don't we start with defining strength? What is strength? You know, can I
Sorry.
just interrupt? I looked it up on Mrs. Google. I love to
Okay.
call her Mrs. Google. And she came up with two definitions, okay? So the first one, she says, strength is the quality or state of being physically strong. And the second time, she says, the capacity of an object or substance to withstand great force of pressure. I don't know. When I talk to people about strength, they talk about, oh, I think it's about control. I have no idea. What do you think is strength?
So I think Raga that strength doesn't have one definition, and I think that it's culturally the definition of strength changes. I think gender changes in circumstances, different circumstances. You need different kinds of strength. Now, I always find it fascinating that in India we have grown up with a different idea of strength. We call it, the moment you say it in Hindi, you say Shakti, you think of Devi, you think of Shakti in many, many different ways. But it's interesting when you said about strength on Mrs. Google, which I think is it's a slightly Western viewpoint. When I was studying Indian sculpture, if you look at Greek sculpture, if you look at the way they sculpt it, it's like it shows you strength visually. You can see every single muscle rippling in that body. You can feel, any of the Greek gods, you actually look at them as physical strength. But when you look at the way that we look at our Indian gods, our sculptures, we give the gods a different type of strength. They're not muscular, but they have several arms, which shows that they have multiplication of strength. So in one hand they might hold a weapon to show that they have that kind of strength. In another hand they might be giving you a blessing, which shows that there is that strength too. I think strength is just many, many different ways, but if you were to ask me to pare it down to just the one thing, I think it is the ability of your mind to have that capacity to understand what is the strength that you need at that point. That is true strength. To be able to tap into what you need at a particular point in time.
So, do you think strength is different for genders as well? Because, when I speak to a man about strength, it's all like this. They'll show their muscle. When you talk to a woman about strength, it's all about resilience. It's all about that inner person inside. So do you think strength means different things for different genders?
Definitely and absolutely. But I want to tell you a story just because I think, we're talking about, in ancient Hindu mythology, the stories that we have are actually all focused on building your strength, whichever way you look at the strength, but they look at strength as the mental capacity to deal with something. And I want to tell you this story. You brought up the idea of gender. So there's a story about, we've all heard of the demon Mahishasur, when Durga was actually created, because Mahishasur could not be killed by a male. It was just written that, it was in his kismet that he could only be killed by a woman. And there is a point before Durga comes into being where Indra, the king of the gods, is absolutely frustrated and furious, and he goes up to his guru Brihaspati because they've been trying to battle against Mahishasur and not winning. And it's been really difficult. So he goes to Brihaspati at one point and he says, do something, do the right kind of prayer so that we get the energy, we get the strength to go out and fight against this man and go and kill him. And Brihaspati says to him, he says, you know something, you have to understand, you can't do it. It is written. And he says, well, do something because we have to win. And he says, the only thing that you can do is develop your resilience, your mental strength, so that when you are in a bad place, that won't affect you so negatively. And equally, when you're in a good place, that won't affect you so positively that you lose track of what's going on. The idea is to bring your mind to such equilibrium that you deal with what is going on around you. We say it these days constantly, don't we? We hear it about it's not about what you do, it's about how you react to something. And he actually tries to tell him, and Indra refuses. He actually tells him, he says, that's okay for sannyasis, for sages like you, for thinkers, for us warriors. It's a different thing. It's all about our strength in our arm. We are going to go out and battle. And he keeps telling him, he says, each time passes. Good times pass, bad times pass. You have to learn to deal with that in different ways, and circumstances are different each time. You can't fight your way out of everything with weapons. So
Very interesting.
we had this philosophy of explaining to people that strength came from inside you, but that with every circumstance, with every gender, with different age groups, the idea of strength changes.
Seema, what I really love about you, all the conversations we have, is how you're able to bring in a topic and you're able to bring in stories around that. So, to me, there's a question that I ask myself quite a bit. So, are stories really important? Why don't we just read a scripture on philosophy, for instance, and try and gain from it? Why do we need stories?
Because, like, actually another story about a story, there's this point at which Ved Vyas, who wrote the Mahabharata and wrote most of our ancient books according to our belief, there is a point where he's sitting there feeling very despondent. He's very depressed. And Narad Muni, the sage, the wandering sage, he comes along and he says to him, he says, why are you so depressed? And Ved Vyas says to him, he says, I've written so much philosophy. I have written philosophy on every single thing that any human being at any time of their life might need. But nobody's following my advice. Nobody's looking at the philosophy. The world is falling into disrepair. Society is falling into depression. I don't know what to do. And Narad says to him, he says, you've just made it too complicated. Who's got the time to sit over there and look at all this philosophy, try and figure out which is the right philosophy to add at which time to use, how to use it? This is too complicated. You have to tell people stories. Stories have the facts, the process, and the resolution all in one place. You know what you're looking at. It's easier to absorb. And most importantly, from a story, you take what is your capacity to learn.
Sure.
Because everybody's capacity is different. Nobody's going to learn the same thing from the same sentence, even. Hence, the stories are extremely important. Hence, we tell stories. Our brain is not made up of molecules and atoms, it's made up of stories.
How
You know,
wonderful.
it's actually made up of layers and layers of preconceptions and ideas and thoughts. And for any new information to access the brain, that entire tower of thoughts and preconceptions and ideas has to shift and move just a little bit for anything new to come in. So it's very difficult to teach you something new. So we tap into the stories that are over there, which already exist. And that's how we teach.
Wonderful. And what an amazing storyteller you are. I can just sit here and listen to you forever. So, on that note, Seema, I want to know, is there anything that you can draw from mythology that is, that you can relate to with the current times? We are facing very challenging times right now. We're sitting at home and working. We are doing things that we've never done before. We're social distancing. We are isolated from our friends, our families. We're not being able to do a lot of things that would normally do, right? So, was there a time that these things have happened, and can you draw upon those kind of stories for us?
Do you know what? The person I always think of whenever somebody talks about, especially in present time, because yeah, our stories are full of different types of circumstances where you've had to find your inner resilience. But I always think of Sita. Okay, now people have heard the Ramayana in a half and half manner, unfortunately, and we always think of Sita as the strong, silent type. You know, she was very she took everything, but we don't actually look at the kind of strength that she had. Now, just think of her story, okay, and think of what kind of strength she had to be able to put up with the stuff that she puts up with at the point when she is being kidnapped, for instance. Now, just imagine how frightening it must have been. Her husband and brother in law are far away. Ravan has come in, and Ravan is massive, both physically and his aura is massive, and he's actually captured her. He's thrown her into his flying chariot and he's taken off. So you're like 33,000 feet above sea level, okay, in this flying chariot, or fairly high up, you know. He's now kidnapping her. She has no idea how to get out of there. He has also stopped on the way to have battle with Jatayu, the eagle who tries to get in his way. This flying chariot, we're told, is kind of dugmaga. It's kind of moving around in the air. How frightened she must have been. She still has enough presence of mind to stop at that point. While all this is going on, she takes off her jewelry and she throws it out just to make sure that somewhere her husband will find it and maybe it'll give him a clue. Fast forward to the time when she is in isolation in Ravan's captivity for 1 year. She was all alone, surrounded by the enemy. She had to make sure she has nobody. She has absolutely no one. Doesn't know what's going on outside. She has to have enough faith inside herself to know that her husband or somebody will come, that things will get better. She has to find enough resilience, enough intelligence in her mind, enough equilibrium of mind to know that her behavior is what is going to save her. So she can't be too rude and too horrible to Ravan, otherwise he might turn around and kill her. She can't be too welcoming so that he thinks that, you know, she's welcoming him in. She's got to be just right. Can you imagine the sort of mental strength that that woman would have had? Later on in the story, she gets exiled from her kingdom.
Yeah.
She has two children. She lives all alone in a hermitage with a couple of sages, with Vishwamitra. That's it. Brings up her two children, never asks for help. Her husband is the king. She doesn't ask for help. She does it all by herself. I mean, to me, she is the ultimate role model of a woman who was, well, she is a woman in this case, so we're talking about a woman, but of a person who is completely, you know, left in isolation to deal with stuff with absolutely no idea when something will happen, when the end will come. We have at the moment got people coming on, you know, the government comes along and does their little newscast every day here in London. And they tell us, they give us a little bit of an idea of what's going on, a little bit of hope, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel that things will get better. We see, we've got internet, we see that, okay, in other places things have gotten better. Hamara bhi, you know, we will
Sure.
also get to that. She didn't have that.
Yeah.
But there was that idea of making your mind that strong. Like Brihaspati says to Indra, everything passes, nothing stays forever. The only way of dealing with it is to get your brain, your mind, you manage yourself.
It's very interesting you say that. You know, when you were saying, you were sharing the story about Sita, the one thing that I thought about was faith, right? What she had was, apart from intelligence and resilience and strength, she kept the faith that this
Yep.
would pass. That's that. Now, she didn't know she was going to be there for a year, just like we don't know how long this is going to last for us, right? So a lot of people are comparing the present situation to war. They say it's war-like. So can you just tell us if there's anything that you can kind of draw upon from the past, saying this is what happened in those times and this is how they dealt with it?
Raga, I think it's actually our vocabulary today that we understand this in terms of war, because that's when other things have happened to us. That is our vocabulary. If you think of ancient times, every time there was a problem, even when they went to war, they actually went to the priests, they went to the temples, they prayed to the gods. And so it was a different set of people who were trying to make you feel better. It was the astrologers and the priests and so on. And it was all about, if you make this god happy, then this will happen. So this is at a time when we worshipped nature, and we thought very highly of nature because we did not have the capacity to live in a way where we felt that we could overcome nature. Mother Nature has come back to actually show us that that is still the case, in spite of all our technology. Okay, but our vocabulary since then has changed. So we look
Sure.
at everything as war.
Sure. So do you think that we learned from it in the
We,
past?
in the past,
Yeah.
I think that at every point, Raga, there is something that we learn from.
Okay.
Okay, but I don't know for how long that learning stays, because I always think of, after the Second World War, which was closer to us than, let's say, the First World War. After that finished, there started the entire flower power movement. People were
Sure.
so fed up. After the World War comes the Vietnam War. America goes to war with Vietnam, which goes on for so long. I mean, longer than the World War. And nobody had ever expected that to happen.
Sure.
And we would like to believe, like, I hear people right now saying, we will come out of this better, we will have learned. Quite honestly, I don't know. I don't have a great deal of belief in the fact that we will have learned, because after the Vietnam War, after the Second World War, when the flower power movement came along,
Yeah.
for a while, those people tried to sort of spread a different set of learning, a different kind of knowledge. But in subsequent times, we learned to laugh at those people. We called them hippies,
Yeah.
and we
Sure.
laughed at them. And we went right back to what we thought would build us up. Yes, the economy was extremely necessary, and so we couldn't really give up everything and go and sit on a hillside and smoke hashish, etc. But it reminds me of that song, how many, what is that? How many something will a something go past?
Blowing in the wind.
Blowing
Ripple they call.
before
The answer, my friend.
is blowing in the wind. Yeah. So, out of this particular situation, yes, we will learn. How much we will learn, I don't know. How many people will go back to it? I mean, most people are still waiting. Isn't that what we hear every
Right.
day? As soon as we're back to normal, we'll do this, because
Yeah.
we are waiting. We're desperate to get back to that. We haven't come to this thing of saying it's going to be a different normal. Let me wait and see what that happens, because it's that sense of security that we're all looking for. And there will be a few people who will change fully. But like the hippies, will we look at them as the fools on the hill, or will we
The
think that
crazies,
or
the
will
druggies.
yeah, or will
You
we
know,
think
so
this
do you think that people are asking themselves, are saying to themselves that I will change? I think people are waiting for others to change or things to change.
always? I think
Yeah.
most people are waiting to go back to living the way that we did before. Most of us are waiting for a normal.
Sure.
I, and the only normal we know is what we had.
Of course.
So we don't really have the option of understanding what a new normal will be.
Sure.
Eventually, if that is what we come to, then we will live that, because human beings are incredibly resilient and adaptive. We will learn, we
Sure.
will live, and we will survive.
Sure.
Have an instinct for survival.
So, from mythology to now, so have the stories changed? When things have changed, transition has happened, transformation has happened, right? So, do the stories share that transformational journey? Because things don't remain the same, they change consistently. So, do your stories share that as well? Do the narratives change?
I think stories are living things, and narratives always change. So a story changes according to circumstances, and it changes according to the person who will tell it, and it changes according to the point from which you tell it. So I call this thing survival stories. So stories are circular. There is a point at a story when you're down and out and the problems are upon you and things are really bad. And then there is a point at the story where you have survived. You've been through that bad thing, but you're not drinking yourself into a stupor lying under a table. You have survived. So it depends on where you tell that story from. And you tell that story from a victim's point of view, you tell it with your shoulders hunched and you tell it with a frown on your face. or you tell it from a survivor's point of view with your shoulders back and say, that happened, we came through it, and we'll
Brilliant.
come to the next thing.
Brilliant. So, in today's corporate times, and this is, I'm going to bring it back to the corporate audience here who's logged in and who is saying wonderful things to us here online. So, Seema, is storytelling critical in today's time? Is it only for the leadership, or is it also for everybody around? Are we going to share stories of what is happening to us now in the ways that you just described? And who is going to take responsibility for those stories?
So, Raga, I think that till today, no leader has ever become successful without being able to tell a good story. Okay? Stories are imperative because they actually touch you here. You know, stories have a currency. Yeah, you give somebody facts, they don't mean very much. Stories add meaning to those facts. That's our currency for story. But I think that this is where, even though it is everybody's responsibility to take a to take a story forward or to take ourselves forward, I think this is what being a leader is about. It is about showing people that this is where the story changes and helping them to then become part of this new story. I think it is a leader's responsibility. And a leader is not just somebody who's the boss in the organization. You can be a leader for another person. You could be a leader for your family. You could be a leader in all sorts of ways. But yes, I think that when change happens and such drastic change happens, it is definitely a leadership quality. And it has to be understood and it has to be built up because leaders also need to understand that a story is not just something that you see from one angle. Like I said, everybody takes their own learning from a story. A leader has to understand that if you want people to follow you, there has to be something in the story that you're telling that appeals to everybody. That is a leader's job.
Sure. So, in today's times, there are many kinds of stories and storytellers, right? A leader is not only just a positive leader, there are leaders who are self proclaimed leaders who share negative news.
Yeah.
How do you manage that kind of leadership?
Unfortunately, the human mind is very geared towards negativity. It is just the way that we are. We have a fabulous goddess, a tantric goddess from Hindu mythology called Dhumvati. Dhumavati is one of the Mahavidyas. Mahavidya means ultimate knowledge. And so these are the 10 goddesses of ultimate knowledge. And Dhumavati is described as, she's the seventh of the Mahavidyas. And they're supposed to take you beyond this veil of illusion, beyond what we are coming to, whatever is sort of being shown to us as this material world and beyond that. And one of the things and she's an angry goddess, she's a hag, she's angry, she's mean, she's all sorts of things. And they say that she surrounds you with dhua, with smoke.
Okay.
And the idea is that when you're surrounded with all this smoke, you become blind. You can't see what is outside. And at this point, you have to go inwards. Okay? You have to go into your mind. You have to access your own mind. And I think that Dhumavati is basically that point of your life where when you're so angry and you have nothing else to give, but where everything is sort of drowning you out, the only person left that you can talk to is yourself, is your own mind. And that's what you have to rely on. And that's when you start to understand the stories that your mind tells you constantly. And unfortunately, like I said, I've discovered certain things about myself. I love daydreaming. It's one of my favorite things, okay? It's my favorite get out time. These days when I daydream, I don't dream happy thoughts. I'm angry. I'm angry with the world. And you have to basically come to terms with that. You have to get past that. And it always reminds me, I've actually turned back to a technique that I used to teach and follow a long time ago. I teach this in the corporate sector. There was a very famous philosopher called Jiddu Krishnamurti. I don't know if you've heard of Jiddu
Yes.
Krishnamurti. He used to say that actually the problem with us is that when we come to an angry thought, we stop it halfway. Okay? So our brain is like a room full of a million butterflies. Okay, there are all these butterflies fluttering around in there, and there's a million of them, so our vision is completely distorted. Everything is, you can't see anything clearly, everything is distorted, everything is kind of, you're looking at it through this haze of fluttering wings. The sound around you is distorted because there's all this fluttering and whooshing of wings. So it's not disappeared, it's distorted. And it's the worst sort of place to be, because he says, how can you think clearly when your brain is like this? And he used to say that every day, at the end of the day, you lie yourself down and you pick up 10 thoughts that you started to think. Because we stop a thought, especially when you get to an angry point. I find that with myself. I get to an angry thought and I stop it and I say, no, 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 I have to be positive. Because you know what, Raga?
Yeah.
In this world of trying to be positive, we have become extremely negative. I think we become worse. There's more anger and depression in this positive world today. So he used to say that you take each thought and you think it through to the end. Just think the whole thought through, finish it. Two things come of that. One is you lay that thought to rest, you give yourself a bit more space in your brain. And secondly, you understand how you are feeling, because when you can understand something, you can manage it better. If you do not understand it, there's no chance in hell that you will be able to manage it.
So you are suggesting that whatever we're going through, the inner turmoil right now, maybe people are going through grief as well, right? Some people have lost very dear ones. Some people are not well right now, and some people have lost their jobs. Some people, there's uncertainty around. So you're saying whatever emotion it evokes in you, whether it is fear, whether it is insecurity, whether it is anger, you deal with it.
Yeah,
You
acknowledge it.
you acknowledge it, you deal with it, you think through the whole thing and not brush it under the carpet that we normally do. And I also think, Seema, we normally do that because we haven't had the time, right? We've got a life to lead. Every day you have to go to work, come back from work, there's commuting, there is hundreds of other things to do. Now we have the time.
We have the time.
So it is the time. So is it coming back to what you were saying, that it is the time for us to look inward? Maybe
It,
this is what happens
it's
at this.
like Bhavati smoke, it's literally we're being surrounded by, we have no idea what this virus will or won't do, whether it will go or not go, whether it will destroy or not. We have no idea. There is a huge amount of insecurity, and it has made us all kind of closed in, so we are literally fogged in, so to speak. And the only place that we can go is inwards. It's time to get to know ourselves. And whatever we feel, we have to acknowledge it, because one is you're feeling it, therefore it is important. You have to.
Right.
We also believe in our ancient mythology that we don't have this thing called a subconscious. That is a Western concept. We call it different layers of consciousness. So ours is about awareness.
Sure.
Understand how you're feeling. Become more aware of yourself. Raise your level of awareness. With that, you understand how you react to things. You have to understand that to be able to manage it. And only from there can you manage it, because you can't change anything. And trust me, you can't also control it, but you can manage it better.
So you think if somebody, you maybe you're going through your own journey, we're all going through our own journey, and you've reached this point. However, the person, whether it's your leadership, whether it is your co-worker, whether it is the person in your family, they haven't been through that journey and they're constantly throwing negatives at you. How do you think you deal with this?
I have to say that at this point, I found that you get to a point where you realize that there's just, you can't deal with the negativity just because it makes you even more anxious. I have actually started by shutting out some of the noise. So I've made a conscious decision to put my phone in the other room for 1 hour at a time. I've just
Wow.
decided I'm not going to listen to, I'm just not going to look at what Facebook is saying, what WhatsApp groups are saying. A little bit of silence, a
You
little.
are, I mean, WhatsApp University is like a full-time academic university, isn't it? I mean, we've all become doctorates right now. But Seema, I'm just going to read out some comments that you're getting before I finish this. So there is Simar Puneet who says, "Your hair looks fabulous."
Thank you so much.
Okay. Simi Such says, "Hi both." And she says, "There is a Ramayan written from Sita's perspective, but I'm sure you already know that." So yes, we kind of discuss that? Is there anything you want to talk about from that point of view?
You know what? There are several Ramayans written from Sita's perspective in modern times, but unfortunately, I found that a lot of them have not, because there are some ancient Ramayans in the 1600s written from Sita's perspective, and those are unusual. Those are different. Those actually give a different perspective. The ones that are written in modern times from the woman's perspective, unfortunately, have not taken the trouble to actually go into the research to find what those stories are that we missed out. And they've kind of developed it in a more emotional kind of slightly, well, not a very, it's not a particular manner that appeals to me just because I don't think it changes it changes her identity in any way, and it doesn't change the story in any way. Okay. It doesn't talk about her strength. It merely talks about her suffering. And I think that that's where I kind of object to it. But there is one new Ramayana written, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the name of the author, in which I believe this is how it goes. So there is the Dhobi. Sorry, I guess we don't really have time to go
No,
into.
no, please go on. We have time.
Okay, so there is the Dhobi. You know, in the old Ramayana, there is this whole where Sita is exiled. There is this laundry man, the Dhobi, who accuses his wife and says, "I'm not like Ram. I think that my wife has been unfaithful to me, and I would throw her out. If Sita was my wife, I would throw her out." So this story starts from here, where the Dhobi comes and says, "I'm going to throw her out," and Sita says, "Well, I'll take her out. I mean, how do we know that we can trust you to say that she's been unfaithful? How do we believe you that you're not the one who's been unfaithful?" And so on. And she says, "Fine, you give her to me. I will look after her." And so this woman comes to work for Sita. And apparently, at this point, Sita says to her, "Okay, tell me what you can do, and I will find you a job. Let's make you independent. Can you wash clothes? Can you cook?" And this woman says to Sita, she says, "Is that the only kind of thing that women do in your kingdom?" I mean, it's, and
Wow.
Sita suddenly thinks, and she says, "You're so right. Why is that only a woman's strength? Come on, let's find." And so there's this whole development of different things that women start to do. And the kingdom becomes very strong. And then it comes to a point where Ravan is, by now, he's conquered the rest of the world. This is a story where Sita and Ram are not married. I found it really interesting the way
Oh,
it was. So the only two kingdoms that Ravan hasn't conquered is the kingdom run by Ram and the kingdom run by Ravan. And so the two of them come together and they say, "Okay, let's join forces and see if we can actually defeat this man." So they join forces, and then various other things happen. But what I loved is the end of the story, in which there is this, like I said, I can't remember the details, but there is this point at which something goes wrong and this war against Ravan falls apart. And Ram says, "No, no, no, I didn't do this. I promise." Because it's something that Ram is supposed to have done. And he says, "But it wasn't my fault." And Sita says to him, she says, "Really? Well, you have to prove yourself to the Agni Pariksha. Prove it."
I love it. I
And
love this version.
yeah, I just thought it was an amazing, amazing story because it really picked on strength from
Oh,
different perspectives, and
sure.
loved the idea where that woman says to Sita, "Is this all that you think women are capable of?" And Sita then says, "Yes, there is a lot of other strengths." I seem to have lost one of my AirPods, sorry,
Yeah.
because they're tucked over here. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we have some amazing, amazing versions of the Ramayana. And I've just discovered a new one that somebody sent me, which is the Tibetan version, which I'm studying now. So, next time, more versions of the Ramayana.
Yes, I love this version because this is what I was sharing earlier, Seema, that stories keep changing, the versions keep changing with times. And I am very certain there will be certain versions of certain stories that will change post the COVID-19 times as well. And I really hope that we all live a very positive life and that we somehow bring ourselves back to stories that are positive. Now, Seema, is there any tip you can give to people like us who are going through stuff and want to come back and listen to positive stories? And any stories that you think we can, any books that we can read?
Do you know what? I think, yes, there's lots of books that one can read. There's a lot of self help books, but I think I think for most people from my conversations, people are not really. up to reading these days. I think that there is a lot of lack of focus from the insecurity and the uncertainty that we're going through. However, there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of amazing self help YouTube videos and audios which one can listen to. I would say at this point is the time to actually either listen to that if you really want a little injection of positivity. But the best way to help yourself really is go and pick a story that is going to help you escape reality for a little while.
Sure.
Best thing you can do to give yourself an injection of positivity, go into a bit of a dream world. For instance, for me, I absolutely love old the really bad ones, detective series, in which by finding one blonde hair on somebody's jacket, suddenly the case is solved and the bad guy is put behind bars, which is nothing like reality today. But I call it hope porn. Okay. And I my hope porn. So all the bad stuff. I mean, you know what I'm watching these days? You want to know? You want to laugh with
Yeah.
me?
Yes,
I'm
please.
watching the A Team.
Oh, I
It is
love
so
it.
bad. It is so bad. It's cringeworthy. But it makes me feel like yes, things will be okay. We have a
Fantastic.
superheroes fighting for us.
Exactly. I'm going to read out some more comments and questions, Seema, before we go. Zora Sayed has actually asked the same thing that I just asked, but I'll repeat that. Hi, Seema. Could you suggest a few stories one could read during this lockdown? Perhaps mythological stories that talk about strong women characters. Maybe we can send some links. Post this.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
there are people like Shakuntala, there are people like Sita. So I would suggest that you read a story. See, the only reason that I'm a little bit careful about when I suggest a story, because over time, over a period of hundreds of years, patriarchy has set in and the stories have been changed. So, yes, there are a lot of wonderful stories about strength, but it depends if you're particularly looking for stories where a woman finds her strength to come forward and fight her way through. It's not always there in the story in the way that you wish to access it.
Sure.
A little bit of I just want to tell you this great story because just for Zoya, I came across a very strange story recently. It's about this woman who is much older. So this is going back a long time ago, so let's say 2000 years ago. By the time you were 18 years old, you were considered an old hag. Okay, so by then you're now past marriageable age. So this is a woman who's got to old age without getting married. Now we don't know how old that is. She could be 25, she could be 30, but according to that time. And her father gets so distressed that his daughter has become old and not married that the father can't cope. He stops eating, he stops drinking. He's the king of the land. He stops ruling his kingdom. He leaves the kingdom. He goes off into the forest and he sits over there and he moans and he wails and he cries and the daughter decides that she has to do something to run the kingdom. So she sits down to pray to the goddess. And she says, please, for the sake of my kingdom and for my father's good health, please can you find me a husband? But what I love about this story, now it's a very bizarre kind of story, but I love it because it's one of those stories that's been shifted off and forgotten, but I'm bringing it back. So she says to the goddess, she says, please find me a husband, please, 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 because my kingdom is at stake and my poor father's life is at stake. Father is very weak. He's like, I've gone, man. I can't cope with this. But this woman doesn't just say, find me a husband, any husband. She says, please make sure, however, that this man is young, good looking, has a good job, and is somebody that I'm going to like, because otherwise I don't want him. So even at that point, she knows exactly what she wants and what she will get. And the goddess says to her, she says, okay, fine, I'll do that for you because. And so at the end of it, the goddess actually sends Kamdev, the god of love and desire, and says, please, can you go and marry this woman because, we have to save the kingdom. So he comes to her and he says, you're beautiful. It doesn't matter what age you are. I mean, of course, in the story now we're told that she takes this dip and she comes out of this and she's all, beautiful again. Forget all that. The fact that he comes to her and says, I will marry. And she says to him, she says, okay, I'll think about it, but I'll tell you what. She says, why don't you go and talk to my father? She sends him off. She says, yeah, if he says I have to marry you, I'll marry you. But what I get from this story is the fact that she's completely self-content.
Yeah.
Her idea of the husband is just to sort of save the kingdom, save her father. She knows what she doesn't want in a husband. And then at the end of it, also, she's not sort of jumping because, wow, it's the God of love and desire himself, this amazing person. She's not jumping up and saying, yes, yes, please take me. She's a "Ha, theek hai."
I love it.
I love
I love it. I'm going to go back to the next one. Meghna Kapadia. She says, hi, both of you. Seema, can you suggest a book about a strong mythological female character? Again, somebody for a female character, apart from Sita, maybe a less known one.
Yeah, so like I said, there is Shakuntala if you feel like reading, because I think Shakuntala is one of the stronger female characters
Sure,
that
sure.
you could look at.
There's a very interesting question, Seema. Tell us about the lucky charm that you became so famous for on YouTube. I know for a fact we've been receiving hundreds of questions and queries on that. You know that.
So we always find that, so there's a little charm that I found. It's probably of Cambodian origin. I was probably made over there, but it was like a little shape of a fish, which is the banner of Kamdev, the god of love and desire. And when you open it up, it's like a pod. On the inside are carved figures, both couples on both sides, both in standing or semi-standing positions, making love. And these positions were supposed to be extremely difficult to do because you needed a lot of strength, because the man would actually stand and the woman would wrap herself around him, so he would have to take his own weight plus the woman's weight, plus he would have to have enough uh, what is the word I'm looking for, where you're really
Agility. No.
agility, and also the strength and the when you're really oh god, what is the word I'm looking for, when you're synchronized or whatever, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to be able to make sure that the love making happens properly. And so this was supposed to be a charm that was given to a bridegroom, to wish him good sexual health for all of his life,
I see.
because it was supposed to be something that it was supposed to be for virility. And we have a lot of sorry, I keep losing my, can you still hear me? I've lost one
Yeah,
of,
I can hear you. We can hear you.
okay, I've lost one of my earpods again. I don't know where it's gone. um, so yeah, it's the idea of uh, that this was an important thing. But what I loved even more, that good sexual health was important for the couple, for the family going forward, for the relationship going forward. It was extremely important, and it was equally the responsibility for both man and woman, because it was always like, everything was always put upon the woman. So this was very much equally the responsibility of a man to make sure that he stayed in good sexual health for the sake of his woman, that he was supported. But what I liked even more about this, that it was considered such an important position, the standing position, and it was considered so important to develop that kind of strength, that in the ancient Kamshastras, um, there was actually a battle formation based on this position, and it was called the Lata Yuddham.
Sorry, what was it called?
Lata Yuddham. Lata,
Lata Yuddham.
where if you wrapped yourself around the man in the same way as the woman, sorry, around your opponent in the same way as the woman wrapped herself around the man, you would be more able to overcome him. It was considered a really good battle formation for the one-on-one battles that would take place. So it was an important lucky charm.
See, I'm mesmerized. This was supposed to be a 25-minute talk. And I think we are like, I don't know, my math is really bad. I think it's 45 minutes already. And we could keep listening to you. I think we're going to bring you back again and talk about other possible emotions as well. Strength is a very, very important part for us, as we know. Right now, all of us need that one thing is strength. And you also spoke about resilience, you spoke about courage, you spoke about faith, and also using the power of the mind, which is very important. I love listening to you, and I could like really listen to you forever. But I think we're short on time, Seema. We've have a lot of other questions as well. I will post it on the comments page. But thank you very much. We are very, very fortunate at Speaking Minds to represent someone like you, a mythologist, a storyteller, author of The Art of Seduction, and all your amazing stories on your YouTube channel. We'll keep coming back to you, and let's tune back in again soon with Seema Anand. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Seema. Love you lots. Be safe, be well. Any last message for our audience?
Just, we are all people of substance. We have it within us. We can cope.
Thank you. Thank you. We can.